All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time on this gorgeous Thursday to learn a little bit more about the Arts and Science Council's Cultural Leadership Training Program. We're really pleased to have you with us. I'm Catherine Mooring. I'm the program director for the CLT program and have had the good fortune to be able to do this work alongside some of the folks you'll get to meet today since 2005. So this is a really wonderful program and way that ASC invests in both the development of leaders in our community and a whole range of cultural organizations of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds. Our plan for today is to walk you all through just an overview of the program. And of course, my thing is not forwarding. Let's see. There we go. And so you can get an understanding of what the program entails. You can, we'll talk about the structure, the sort of why this might be of interest to anyone. And then we'll have some opportunity to speak with those who have participated in the program over the years and get a little bit of their perspective. And we'll have some time for questions for me and for the panelists who are always really wonderful resources. So again, thank you all for being here. Adam, do you want to do a quick introduction from the ASC perspective?
Sure. Good afternoon, folks. As Catherine said, thanks so much for taking a little time out of your day to learn about this program. I'm the Vice President for Community and Artist Support at the Arts and Science Council, which means in addition to supporting an incredible team, including Catherine, I help facilitate ASC's funding opportunities. The Arts and Science Council is a public-private partnership, which means we're leveraging resources from local and state government, as well as the private sector to support art, science, history, and heritage activity across the county. We are grateful to do this work, like I said, in partnership with these wonderful organizations. And we are committed to investing in people, programs, and ideas that move us to a more equitable, sustainable, and innovative creative ecosystem. From my perspective as the facilitator of most of ASC's grant opportunities, this is a really important dovetail to that work, right? In addition to making a financial investment in these organizations and artists by hosting capacity building opportunities like the Cultural Leadership Training Program, we're creating opportunities for all of these organizations to grow in their own capacity. So thanks again for your interest in being part of this.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you for covering that first slide. So we will keep moving forward. So I like to start this session just with a couple slides about why this program might be of interest to you as you're thinking about ways that you want to, develop as a leader and serve community. And so this is just a kind of a brief overview of why you may want to join a nonprofit board. Some of you may already have some board experience, which is wonderful. But I'm not going to read all of these bullet points, but essentially, it's such a great opportunity to have an impact in your community in a really individualized way and working alongside others to have a collective impact as well. I think it's a phenomenal way to build your own professional and personal leadership capacity. We were actually in a session with the class last week, and our facilitator talked a lot about particularly being a place to develop your influencing skills. So thinking about how you as a leader are.
It was my mistake.
Okay. Sorry, guys. So yes, this concept of like how we're influencing as individuals and working as a collective to help move organizations forward in sustainable ways. It's a wonderful way to meet and connect with other people who, maybe share some similar interests or values, are from like a breadth of organizations, companies, you name it, across the community. So it's a really cool way to meet some people through your board service. And honestly, at the end of the day, right, it's a way to really channel your passion and enthusiasm for a cause or an organization or a mission that means something important to you, something that you want to share with others and support beyond just sort of the more traditional ways of, volunteering as, for a standalone event or writing a check. Those are all important too, but the board piece takes it to a little bit of a different level. So similarly, a few ways that board service differs from other volunteer roles. Again, this may be familiar for a lot of you, but just like to cover it. So certainly there's a little bit of a difference from a time commitment standpoint, right? This is different from like the one-off volunteer opportunity that you might, show up on a weekend or an evening or an afternoon to support a specific activity. This is an ongoing commitment of time. Typically, most boards are looking at 3-year terms of service. Those can vary based on the organization, but this is a longer term commitment. It can also be a more significant time commitment just throughout the course of a board service year, right? So you're typically, being asked to certainly participate in regular board meetings with your peers on the board, but you may also have committee roles and assignments. There may be opportunities or encouragement to attend and participate in events or programs that an organization is offering at the community level. And so it's certainly a time commitment and something that we always want to stress is a big piece of the puzzle. There's also a financial commitment. Again, this ranges widely based on the organization and its life cycle and sort of what their financial model looks like, but the expectation is that board members should be contributing financially to an organization. And if just thinking about that practically, it's hard to go out and be a passionate advocate to ask others to invest if you haven't done so yourself. And so, we always stress the importance of understanding what a financial commitment is for any board service that you accept. And this is something that I think most organizations are quite transparent about. It's a good question to ask. So that you know up front what that expectation is. And then, there is a legal obligation as a board member for a nonprofit organization in North Carolina, and really anywhere. North Carolina has its own set of rules, which is something we cover in the program. But understanding that this is the board as a body is essentially the legally governing body for the nonprofit organization. You may have very dynamic talented staff at the fore. The board is still the ultimate legal body that is governing the operations and the long-term sustainability and financial well-being of the organization. So there's kind of a legal level of commitment that's a bit beyond like a traditional volunteer role. So I'm going to jump into a bit of an overview specifically about ASC's CLT program. This program is almost 20 years old. It was launched in 2005, and it was launched really in response to a couple of priorities or needs that had been identified. One was certainly recognizing that Charlotte, even 20 years ago and certainly now, is this hub for folks moving to this community and people who want to get engaged and involved, maybe coming from other parts of the US, maybe coming internationally. Like there's such a diverse range of talent coming into this community. And certainly, from the cultural sector standpoint, there were a lot of questions around, hey, how do we identify and connect with these new potential leaders who are coming into our community? Or are there folks in our community already who perhaps haven't been as engaged or have been engaged in a more traditional volunteer way and want to step up their leadership? So how do we, take advantage of this talent, right, that is here among all of us? And then how do we evaluate and position those leaders to be effective board leaders? And so there's kind of the talent identification piece, and then the training, and then certainly this concept of helping folks navigate and find the place that really fits their needs and expectations and desires in terms of how they want to make an impact. So from an eligibility standpoint, the Arts and Science Council's primary service area is Mecklenburg County, so the full breadth of Mecklenburg County. And so this program does focus from an eligibility standpoint on individuals who either live or work in Mecklenburg County. So it's kind of your primary place of service. And also the second caveat is those who are new to local arts and culture board service. So I said earlier, we may have folks who've already served in other board roles. Fantastic, wonderful. Those skills can be delightfully transferable. If you may have moved here from another market and served in an arts and cultural board capacity, great. If you've already served on or currently serving on a local Mecklenburg County arts and cultural nonprofit, this program really isn't geared to that. Like ASC periodically offers some other training for existing local arts and culture board members. So I would encourage you to check those options out going forward. But again, this is kind of about like bringing in new voices, perspectives, and capacities into local Mecklenburg County organizations. A little bit about the structure of the program. This is a competitive application and review process. So this info session is always a great place to plug in and get some additional insight before you start that process. We ask that, we'll go through the application components in just a minute, but you are essentially submitting an application that will ultimately be reviewed by a committee who will make the selections around participants for each year's class. We're generally looking at a number in that kind of 25 to 30 range. Kind of depends on the pool each year. We actually implement the program through 9 monthly sessions that kind of run on an academic calendar. So September through May. All of these sessions are on Thursday afternoons from roughly 3 to 6-ish, depending on the day and the location. Most of them are third Thursdays. There's a little variance in terms of, you know, some other schedules and holidays, but you are meeting monthly. The sessions have a couple of components. Certainly at the core, there is, I would call them more kind of academic focus on building good governance best practices. So that includes everything from kind of an orientation to the overall cultural sector in this community, kind of how it works, who the players are, ways that you can.
Sorry, Catherine, I clicking the wrong thing. I apologize.
There are going to be like 6 individual links now. Other sessions that focus on, like we talked about a little bit earlier, some legal and fiduciary responsibilities. We talk about board staff relations dynamics, how those different roles work in partnership with one another. There's a whole session around nonprofit financials. We talk about organizational life cycles, cultural equity and community. It really runs the gamut. And so the idea is that we're giving you a really solid grounding in you know, board governance, but also, you know, with some insight, I think, into this particular community and how all that works together. The other part of the session is designed to be much more experiential and immersive. So the idea is that you're going to learn some great academic best practices, right? And you're going to get exposure and introduction to, you know, cultural organizations, cultural venues and spaces, different types of programs that, you know, perhaps you might not be familiar about. And this is sort of how we begin to help people navigate the matching process of figuring out how they, you know, how and where they want to serve. So that's a really kind of fun dynamic piece of the pie. And then there's kind of a bonus activity that involves current members of the program having the access to observe actual board meetings with organizations in the sector throughout the program. Every year, it's something that I think our program alumni say is one of the more valuable components. It's kind of like a plus at the end of the structure, but it's a great way to understand kind of how boards function, what culture feels like inside of different organizations, and really think about where you feel like is the best fit for you. And so speaking of fit, the sort of icing on the cake is that we work to facilitate a matchmaking process so that it's not like you're just learning good practice and you're meeting and being introduced to different organizations and programs. We actually help you kind of navigate the process of finding the place that fits best for you. I'm almost done with this part, and then we'll get into the fun part of the dialogue with the panel. So I always like to reiterate some of the CLT application components. If any of you have already gone into the form, you can certainly see those different components. There's also a PDF on the website where you can see like the entire application all at one time, which I think is really helpful to kind of get prepared to actually go through the SurveyMonkey form, since a lot of fields are required. But it's pretty straightforward. You know, obviously we're going to ask for overall kind of contact information. We ask you to upload a resume, there's a section where we ask you to share examples of previous community involvement, and that can be through some, often folks have a lot of that involvement through their work. It can be through work, it can be personal, whatever that combination looks like for you. There are only 2 narrative responses that are a part of the application. I would say they're important. You don't have to write a thesis, but it is really a helpful tool for the selection committee in terms of getting a little more insight about kind of you and your perspective and why this is interesting, and how this could sort of build and be a part of your own leadership journey. I would say this next bullet, put a pin in this now, because this is what trips people up from a deadline standpoint, is that we do ask for 2 letters of recommendation. So start thinking about who might write your letters of recommendation earlier, sooner rather than later, particularly given that the deadline is in June. And so we invariably run into somebody on vacation right when the letter is requested. These can be letters from colleagues, supervisors, people that know you very well and can speak to your community engagement, your passion for service. We give you 2 so that you can kind of have a couple different voices speaking on your behalf. So again, flag that letters of recommendation and make sure you ask for those on the front end. Then we have just a series of, check boxes around interest areas, demographics, things like that, that are helpful, for us in understanding like what the pool looks like of all of our applicants, and are very helpful as we get further along in the matching process. The last important thing I would say here is that the program dates are on the website. They're on the application form. Please pay attention to those program dates, and before you go through all of the hard work of putting together application components, make sure that the dates actually work for you. We recognize that things come up, and not everything is set in stone at this point, but the idea is that there's only 9 sessions. So if you start running into conflicts from right out of the gate, it's sort of you missed opportunities to engage and learn, and it can impact kind of how the class works. And so I would say please pay attention to those program dates. It's all up front, so there shouldn't be any like surprises down the road in that space. And then so that's all part of the written application. We have a selection committee composed of program alumni over all those years that this program has been in existence, who all read, review, and score those initial written applications. And then we assign interviews. So if you make it past that first screen, and most people do, we'll be in touch, like based on volume of applicants, if we need to make a preliminary decision before we move into interviews. But we will essentially pair up members of the selection committee, and so everyone who goes through an interview will have the opportunity to meet at one time, but with 2 folks from the selection committee. It's a really great opportunity, I think, just to connect with people who've been through the program, who are active in the community, as much as it is an interview for participation in this program. So the interview piece will happen largely kind of in July, August timeframe, and then the selection committee will meet in August and make decisions, and that's when we'll do program notifications. Okay, that is a lot. Before I introduce our panel, are there any just questions based on logistics that I've covered so far? And Adam, if you can help me, if there's stuff in the chat or something like that, that'd be great. You'll just probably have to come off mute if you have a question, just because I can't see everybody. Okay. Hearing no burning questions, we will move into our panel conversation. So I'm going to try to spotlight our panel. We'll see if this works. It sometimes seems to work and sometimes doesn't. And I'm going to take us out of the screen sharing for a bit. So I want to thank first our panelists for joining us today. These are all either members of the current class that is graduating in about 6 weeks, or alumni who've participated in the program in prior years. They can all, speak to their experience in the program, as participants, and also for those who are graduates and have been out in board service opportunities, speak to that as well. So I'm going to start with a few questions, and then we'll open this up for any of you who'd like to ask our panel or any other clarifying questions. So I'm going to ask if you all can introduce yourselves, and I'll just sort of call on you so we don't have to do the awkward who's volunteering next thing. And just share a little bit like who you are, name, you know, company or organization, if it's applicable, and, you know, current board or potential board service placements. So I'm going to start with Kristen.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Tokic. I work in the international office at Queen's University here in Charlotte. And I am an arts lover by nature. And like Catherine said, I was one of those people who got kind of relocated to Charlotte and wanted to jump in. So from that sort of speed dating and meeting organizations, I fell in love with two organizations that I have the privilege of joining the board. One is Clayworks Charlotte, and the other one is Children's Theater Charlotte. Yeah.
Thank you. Chris.
Hey there, Chris Saha. I work for a construction company in Charlotte called Edifice Construction. I graduated the program back in, I think, Catherine, we were thinking 2019. Which seems like a very, very long time ago, pre-COVID. But I rolled off of this program onto the Children's Theater board as well, and rolled off of there about a year ago. And since then have joined a couple of other boards in Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center, which I now serve in my second year as the board chair, and then started up a non-for-profit organization called Regroup Carolinas, which serves children that are we're workforce development, especially in the construction trades industry. So this program has been a fantastic catalyst for me to get more involved in the community.
Chris. All right, Sharon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Rahilio. I work with Honeywell in our now corporate office in Uptown Charlotte. I am part of the graduating class that's just about to graduate in June. Super excited about it. And there's two boards I'm in final conversations with. Fingers crossed those work out well. I will say I have a really, really busy business job during the day, and I was really missing the artistic connection and the community connection. And this program has just been a fabulous way to, as Chris said, get back in touch with the community, get involved with the community, and just become more aware of what's going on in Charlotte.
Thank you, Sharon. And Ladarius.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ladarius Thompson, and I serve as the Director of Academic Community Engagement at Queen's University as well. So I have my great colleague, Kristen, here. And so I graduated from the class last year. Oh, it seems very long ago, but I had a wonderful experience, thoroughly enjoyed everything that we gained throughout the process. Similar to Kristen, I'm a transplant to Charlotte and wanted to find a way to get involved, especially given the nature of my job is community engagement. And so I found this program to be immensely supportive in doing that and gave great introductions to the wonderful things that are happening in the Charlotte community. And so through the program, I also joined two boards. I don't recommend that, but if you feel called to, go ahead. But I also joined the VAPA board, which is the Visual Arts and Performing Arts Center. And then I'm also on the board for We Rock Charlotte, which is a music empowerment organization.
Thank you all. So you all started on this path a little bit in your responses, but I'd be curious if you want to elaborate just a bit on how participating in this program has prepared you, or in Sharon's case, like is preparing you to move into some of these board leadership roles, and how that, what, if there's any sort of big takeaways or ahas that were a part of that preparation. And I'm just going to let whoever has the energy jump in first.
I will say I have a big, strong history background in Disney. I worked for them around the world for 10 years. So the art side, I got it. So this program was giving me the tools on the other side of the arts. What's happening in the back of house? What are these decisions that the board is making so that the arts can thrive? And every month you're going to have a different topic, a different experienced professional in the industry, teaching you, leading you, presenting, doing whole presentations. There'll be fun times too, but you're going to learn a lot. And so for me, this program really brought to light the parts that those parts I was not knowledgeable about. Whether I'm not a big marketing person in terms of selling you something. I like marketing to present and get people excited about something, but I'm not a good salesperson. And so that's a hard one to swallow, that on the board, you have to think money. You're going to have to ask friends and invite them to events, and you have to be okay with that. So even just that one, learning that as a takeaway was really important to me. And just, you're going to learn, you're going to see where your strengths lie. And this program's really going to show you some of the things you have to hunker down and learn. You don't have to be the expert on it, because depending on the type of board, you know, if it's a working board or advisory board, you may have the experts on your staff, but you're going to be right under them. So for me, this program was immensely great for that, for helping me fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I think to build on that, Kristen, I think for me, it was opening my eyes to the amount of organizations that were out in the Charlotte Mecklenburg community. There was just so many organizations that I had never heard of before and got to experience. So even beyond my board placement, I think that there are organizations that my family and I get involved with that I never knew even existed before going through this program. And then secondly, Catherine, as you talked about, just learning some of those incremental parts and pieces that, you know, people join boards and stuff like that, but really understanding some of the roles or responsibilities and the risks that have to come along with that, especially as you move up from just being a board member to part of an executive committee or even chairing an organization. There's a lot there, and I still rely on Catherine as a resource even now, 4 or 5 years later, for stuff that comes along during my board service, which has been extremely beneficial for me.
Yeah, and I will add one particular skill, the art of influence. So, you know, whatever company or job you may be at, you're all at the same company, you know what you're hired to do. When you're joining a board, you have all these diverse backgrounds, which is fantastic, but everybody's coming in with very different perspectives about an organization that they could be new to. And a particular interesting thing at the last session, Catherine mentioned it, that we were at when they were talking about the art of influencing. And I asked a question: what if you're the sole person on a board that raises your hand and says, I disagree with this, and nobody else agrees with you? And her answer really surprised me and made me think, and it was, perhaps you're going at this the wrong way and you're the reason they're not agreeing with that topic. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's very eye-opening to think about. So just the awareness about and learning how to be more influential in such a diverse environment with, again, people from different backgrounds and different skill sets, I think that's super important.
And I'll also add, I definitely echo everything everyone else said, but for me, what I gained from the program was just reconfirmation of my own skill set. And so I think as a transplant coming in, I was a little apprehensive about what kind of influence can I have. I'm still learning the community as I'm doing this. And I wasn't sure what kind of role I could really provide to the board, but in my time, I've learned that like some of my own natural skill sets have been more helpful to the board than what I thought they could have been. And I think I had this image in my mind that it was all about writing a big check and going to ask others for writing big checks as well too, which it is sometimes that. However, there are other moving pieces that go along with it as well too. And so like currently for We Rock Charlotte, I lead the strategic planning committee, which I never thought I would do, especially coming a year out of the program. But I realized that I have the skill set that I use in my job every single day and don't think about it in the context of community. And so switching that brain a little bit and realizing that I can do this, I can lead this committee, I already have these kind of natural skill sets, has been helpful. And having the program kind of reinforce that has been probably the greatest piece of that as well too. And I would also say the networking pieces have been incredible throughout the program as well too. Similar to what Chris said, I've been invited into spaces that I never thought I would have been, just by simply being out there and just being a face for the organization, and even the connections through my colleagues throughout the program. I'm sure Catherine will love this, but we have a group chat that we speak very regularly about. And a lot of times if we have board questions, we will go into this group chat and just kind of throw it out there to see, like, is anyone else experiencing this, or anyone else have thoughts around this? That group chat has now turned into us getting together like once a month for brunch, just to kind of talk about, like, here's what our boards are doing, here's what we're doing. It's just kind of a space for us to check in. And it's probably one of my favorite things that we do, is that check-in session.
I love that. Thank you, Ladarius. Great example. So we have folks who are considering applying, right? And I've talked about like the process and sort of, you know, more clinically what to expect. I'm wondering if you all may have some, you know, advice, counsel, tips that you might want to share with individuals who are considering completing an application to participate in the program. And I know we've got folks who've served on the selection committee in the past as well, so may have some insight from that perspective as in addition to kind of your own application experience.
I would say I was surprised at the letter of recommendation, what an interesting self-reflective process that was for me, and take time on it. Even deciding who you ask, you know, we're all adults here. We all know lots of people in our lives, but I almost felt like I was back in college asking for a recommendation letter. And I was like, I don't want to call my mom and say, Mom, what do you think I should do? But as I approached these people that, you know, were influential in my life, and said, hey, you know, I need this, and just talking it through, it was just a learning process about myself. That was really an interesting thing. And then seeing what they wrote, because, you know, as you ask them and they come back and say, well, what do you need to hear? You give them a general outline, but it was really interesting. So that process was a very self-learning process for me. And the new attachment to people I already knew well in a very different way. So I would say take that seriously. Really talk through with your people that you select about what you want out of that letter, as much as what you want to submit out of that letter.
I think from my standpoint, you know, first of all, I don't know that I had a lot of examples to give on some of the criteria where it said, you know, talk about your past examples of service, and really it caused me to reflect and think upon what I did do in volunteer activities and stuff. But I think that helped me really formulate my responses for my questions on what I wanted to get out of the program, and where, you know, how I wanted to get more involved with it. So I would say from that, you know, I've been on the evaluation side for at least 3 years now. So I will say, don't let the, you know, lack of previous involvement discourage you from applying. I think there's a lot of criteria that we use to evaluate, and that's only one small component. I think more than anything, especially when we get to the interview phases, we're looking for people that have the drive and the passion to do the program, are committed to the program, have the support of their employers, or if they're self-employed, have made that mental time commitment to really immerse yourself in the program during those 9 sessions, so that you really get as most out of the sessions as possible, because they are extremely useful if you commit that time.
I would just lead with the obvious. You're here, you're curious, you obviously have a heart or passion for some form of the arts. So lead with that. And then if there is any doubt in there, I don't know, you know, if I have the skills, or if I'm not sure what the doubt would be, I don't want to label it, but just know that through this process, all facets of you will come through. With Clayworks, I joined, like Ladaria's, like, oh, I'm chair of the strategic committee. Well, I was just on the strategic planning committee. Then I became the chair all of a sudden, and then, you know, did that. But through that, we absolved that, and we have a new plan, but there's no strategy committee. Now I'm the marketing outreach, you know, like even like trying to already identify what you might or might not succeed in, and seeing you're not going to see that avenue. So wherever the doubt is, just know like this is bigger and greater, and you're not alone. You're going to walk alongside it with your classmates, and then when you get to the boards, you're not alone. It's not a board of one. So it's, you know, we're stronger in those numbers, and Charlotte's huge, but it's the arts community is really connected and small, believe it or not. So I would just say, you know, just go for it. I'm so glad that each and every one of you are here, and you know, for the greater good. And it really does make a difference. Like I promise you'll feel this moment when you're looking back, or maybe you'll be one of us, you know, and Catherine invites you. And, you know, I remember I was a little nervous and I didn't know who to ask, you know, like Sharon said, or, you know, I don't, who should be my reference. And I mean, those are important, but the fact that your heart is in it and you're here is the most important part.
And I would definitely echo the same things. I mean, I would echo exactly what Kristen said, lead with curiosity. I mean, curiosity has brought you this far. So I would say continue to lean into that. Obviously, you care about your community because you're coming this far as well, too. So I would say, if anything, come in a little bit like a sponge. You know, I was apprehensive coming in because I was new to the community and wasn't sure what I was going to get out of it, and claim out completely different than what I expected it to be. And so I'm thoroughly grateful for the experience, and I would say just kind of show up just eager to learn. You'll be amazed at the content and knowledge that you'll leave in such a short amount of time. Like I kind of miss the classes a little bit. Not that I want to go back, but I do kind of miss the connections a little bit.
Thank you all for sharing all of your experiences and wisdom and good advice. I am going to open it up to questions. I mean, I can ask more questions, but we have folks on the call who may have some specific questions. So if you want to come off mute, or if you want to drop a question in the chat, you've got me here to sort of talk about program logistics and overall management, and you have 4 phenomenal resources who can speak to their own experiences. So welcome any questions that anybody may have.
I have one. Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Thompson, and I was just reading on the website about the actual sessions. Could you guys talk about some of your favorite sessions that you attended, whether it be at some of the local venues or a lecture that you really enjoyed?
Great question.
I mean, I could talk for the next 20 minutes about that part. And Kristen, I'd have to say Clayworks was one of my favorites right off the back, and you ended up on the board there. That's right down the street from my house. So that, you know, that's part of the great things, is that the program days were at so many places that I had never been before. The Aviation Museum for us, the ballet, well, the ballet's training facilities, you know, so many cool places. I think from the experiences side of things, you know, I'm listening to, unfortunately, the now deceased executive director of the Raptor Center was phenomenal. And he was just meeting some of these executive directors that just you could see how influential they were on their organizations, their community, and the board that was serving with them. And then lastly, I'll just I'll say that the legal side of the learning session that I went through was kind of the most eye-opening of mine, when you talk through all of the different risks, the insurances that may be over there to cover you as a board member, and just some of the impact that you can have depending on whether or not you are just basically a glorified fundraiser on the board, or if you are actually participating as an officer and have real impact in what happens with that organization.
I agree. It's really hard to pick a favorite session because they're all so unique. And I feel like I would tell Catherine each time, every time I went to a session, I would be like, oh my goodness, this is the best place I've ever been. And that's the coolest thing I've ever learned. Last week, we took a violin lesson. We heard a storyteller. It just goes on and on. So I would say carve out the time first and foremost. At first, I was really worried about that when I signed up. Now I cannot imagine missing one. The only reason I would ever miss one is I was sick. It's that important to me. And then from a learning standpoint, I believe the financial and accounting preparation that we've gone through, just really eye-opening to think about it. Again, considering that you're talking about the private sector, which was new to me, to many people, versus the public sector. And it's just done in a way that's not overwhelming. You don't walk away feeling like this is too much, I can't keep up. It's kind of spoon-fed to you as you go through it in ways that's digestible, that you can learn it and take away and have decent application for it. So I'm really thankful for that.
I would also echo the same things my colleagues have said around the legal and financial aspects. I remember there was one particular session where we left with I think it's called Money Matters book, which is a book that I have like written, highlighted, copied some pages from, which has been very helpful, especially for an organization, a younger organization who's still trying to get their footing and trying to understand their financial gaining. That was one of the pieces I was most concerned about going in. And then after leaving that session with the resources that we were given, I felt a lot more comfortable with it as well too. I would definitely also echo like the kind of city tour that we did for each session was probably my favorite, of just seeing different organizations who are out there and some of the things that we did there. One thing I particularly remember, I think it was the time we went to the ballet and we did like singing and then also improving all at the same time in the ballet facility, which was kind of chaotic, but it was also very fun at the same time. And those were the pieces that I remember the most, like Innovation Barn and WFAE, the radio, and all of those things were just impactful to go to those spaces and see how things were working kind of behind the curtains.
So our legal session was at the Raptor Center, and it was a very special time because it was just coming out of COVID when they were opening the new center. So I think they'd opened summer, June or July, and it was one of our first sessions. So it was just something magical about being there with the director and having the hard stuff taught to us, but in a very exploratory location. Honestly, my two favorite ones are the two boards I'm on, but these sessions happened before I joined the boards of them or after. I think they both happened after I was set to join the boards. There you go. After speed dating. But they did violin lessons with us at Children's Theater Charlotte. And so these grown adults are like clunking out gorgeous sounds, all of them lovely sounds. And it was just so fun for us all to just, enjoy the arts, because that's what we're not just there to like, oh, budgets, numbers, this is time, fiscal year's ending, let's vote that in. It is the arts. So those ones that got us, doing the senses and using our sensories, Clayworks, as Chris said, because we got to do hand mold. Well, I did hand molding, not sure what you guys did, but you do have a lovely, Catherine has orchestrated a wonderful balance of the arts for you while you're learning, and then the networking part of seeing the different organizations in Charlotte. So you're in for a real treat.
Thank you for those responses. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And I always like to say, this is sort of the magic of arts education for anybody who's on the fence about that, right? It's like using the sort of animating power of arts and culture to make the content sticky, right? So people often will say, oh, I remember the legal session because we were at the Raptor Center, right? Or I remember what we talked about in fundraising because we were over here, right? And so the idea is that the curriculum is designed to sort of meld those two things together. And as I said earlier, I think the experiential pieces also really help people kind of hone in on, for them, like the kinds of spaces and organizations and missions like they want to serve. And so it's a little bit by design, and it's also a lot of fun. And we rotate from year to year the different experiences and venues. So like one class may not have the same set of identical experiences, right? We have to be, diplomatic with our many partners and spread the experiential wealth on that front as well. So it's always a really fun, intentional mix of experiences. Do we have any other questions while we are all together? We are also recording this, as you've noticed, and so you can come back to it if something comes up later.
So I have a question of being that however long you've ever been in Charlotte, you probably already have families and relationships and things like that. What has been your experience with building new relationships through this, friendships or building community or things like that? Does it feel like that's also something that's all come out of this experience, or is it still similar to maybe work relationships or things like that?
Good question. Thank you. Panel.
Personally, I will say some of my classmates I am still extremely close with today, and it being now 5 years since I got through the program, there's probably, I'd say, about 5 or 6 folks that I still stay in contact, or we've just kind of gotten into similar circles over the years as we've crossed professional worlds in the different organizations that we serve. But on top of that, just getting more involved with the organizations that we got to experience, not only from an attendance standpoint, but also just rolling up and helping. And, you know, and maybe I'm not on the board on these organizations, but I'm also helping out at volunteer events or just helping spread the word on some of these organizations. That has gone well beyond just me sitting through the program and getting assigned to a specific board, as I've now reflected upon it 5 years later.
And I agree. I think even some of the speakers that are at the events, and some of the people doing the demonstrations, as they're talking and they're good, I'm like, have my phone out as going to the car, linking in with them in other ways to just develop those connections more. So it does take personal initiative to like continue those relationships. But it really broadens who you know, and I just appreciate the diverse backgrounds from just who the people are, what they do. If you take advantage of it, it's a fabulous network.
I would definitely echo the same things I think I mentioned earlier, but like I'm still very much in contact with my class. There's a group of us that get together very frequently and celebrate each other's accomplishments, talk about our boards and kind of process things. And that is something that I thoroughly enjoy. I would definitely say as a transplant coming into this program, I've been in Charlotte for 3 years at this point, and I would definitely say my human capital has transitioned tenfold, especially going through this program. You know, I was immediately thrust into the rooms with county manager and mayor and you know, TD Bank president and all these other things. And so, you know, I had no choice but to kind of, you know, pull my pants up and just kind of get to it and participate. And so I would definitely say that it's helped me tenfold in building relationships and cultivating relationships and utilizing those on behalf of the organization. And so all of the things that I thought would have been more challenging, such as making that big ask for funding or attendance, has gotten a lot of easier in my time in the program, especially as I, you know, often have lunch with the county manager and asking for funding for all kinds of different things. And so I give a lot of credit to my organizations for putting us in those places and forcing us as a board to do our job, which is what I love the most.
I'll close that one out. So for me, there's 3 ways that it helped me with relationships. The first one is slightly embarrassing, but I lived out of the US for about 5 years and came back in 2019 when I was going through who do I have write my my recommendations for this. My mom said, I think your brother did that program. I was like, what? And so my brother was in 2 of these images in the slideshows that were just on here, and he did the program maybe 10 to 12 years ago. He's my baby brother. So that like connected me and my own blood family, first of all. So I'm closer to my brother. I realized how much we didn't talk that I didn't know he went through this with Catherine. So that, and then for an example of my own personal circle, just 2 weekends ago now, Children's Theater Charlotte had our annual gala, and I decided to invite all the moms I knew, not their husbands, no offense, but all the moms that had kids somewhere in a children's theater age range between 3 and 18, and bought a whole like 10 tickets and brought them all in, and they had the best time. And I brought Children's Theater Charlotte, you know, some mothers and parents who will bring their kids to that. So, and that got us closer. They were just so shocked at like, some of them didn't know Imagine On existed. And so now they're like, we should go to the First Word Park and bring our kids. And so I am so excited for what those relationships look like when I shared the organization with them in my circle. And I'm in Fort Mill, so I'm far. So it was fun to bring them there. And then lastly, our relationships, an intentional one with Children's Theater Charlotte is we started small groups. And so under our small groups, we're supposed to go about once a month, but we get together. And so the board divides up in smaller groups to just say, how are you doing? Oh my gosh, how's life? Maybe not even board topics most of the time. Actually, not really any, but just to meet. And so I have gained such great friends out of that. And those are friends that, you know, in those moments, without those, I would just see them at board meetings or stay 15 minutes after the meeting, and I wouldn't be able to really form those relationships. But in doing all those, you have to show up, right? So you only build relationships as much as you show up to do that. So we agreed to maybe take off our lunch or our work a little bit to go meet in the small groups. I showed up to sponsor some of my friends to come to the gala. It's kind of a give and take, but the world's your oyster with making friendships and relationships that'll last a lifetime.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You guys are great. See, this is why I asked the panel, because they have all the good, juicy details to share with you. It was like, we have an alumni social tonight. And so we do try to, it's more informal. It's not something that's like particularly curated, but we have people with, you know, the social enthusiasm that have been through the program who kind of like to ringlead that kind of thing. And so we try to bring the alumni together. I mean, whoever can make it, you know, so there are 500 alumni of this program, right, at this point, and not all of whom even live in Charlotte anymore, right? You can imagine people are all over the place, which has been really fun to sort of follow in different cities. But you know, a little core group, whoever can kind of make it at the time, will come in and meet up somewhere and just connect for an hour or so. So we do try to create spaces for that kind of continuing relationship building. But I think, as you heard, everybody individually like takes from it, right, their own kind of, you know, relationships and kind of ongoing communications with, whether it's class members, organizations, fellow board members, right, you name it. All right, we have time if there's one more question. Happy to take the one more question. Otherwise, we will wrap up.
I just had a quick question about the interview process. So is it just one interview, and also is it more about you know, the items you provided, or is there a specific purpose of the interview process?
So the interviews, it's only one. So there's one interview. We generally say, you know, or you know, recommend that those are maybe 30 minutes. So it's not like a marathon kind of situation. The committee members have the option to schedule those if they want to do them in person or virtually. These days, usually they're virtual, just because it's easier when you've got bringing people together from different places. The goal of the interviews is really to for the committee members to kind of check in with and affirm, you know, what they've read kind of on the page, right? Because everybody expresses themselves differently, and so sometimes the interview can be really helpful in terms of like learning more about someone that maybe wasn't shared in the application, or you know, or if there's sometimes, you know, there's a weird disconnect, right? Like, this doesn't sound anything like the thing we read and learned, and the folks on the committee could speak to that, I'm sure. But really the idea is just to provide more of a like personal way to meet and learn from, you know, folks who are interested in the program. And it's both, I would say, an opportunity for the committee members to learn a little bit more about the applicants, but also, you know, you're talking with two graduates, right, who are largely going to be coming from different perspectives, probably serving on different boards. Like, so it's a kind of a cool opportunity for applicants to just have some time with folks who've been through the program and are involved, and, you know, ask, you know, questions you may have about the program itself, or just, you know, kind of how that's working out for them in their lives. And so I think, you know, those are generally pretty rich conversations. But yeah, we didn't do interviews for a few years kind of at the outset, and it became pretty obvious that when we were going through selection committee conversations, I mean, it's hard to just get everything off of like just a static document. And so we added that component a few years in, and I think it's been really rewarding, I'd say, both for applicants and for interviewers. Any of our selection committee folks want to chime in?
No, I you know, there are certain examples. I mean, not obviously, not everybody's going to come to an information session like this where there's just a misconception of what this program is about. And so we've been able to kind of filter. I remember one person thought this was how you get on the board for the Arts and Science Council. And so we, you know, took the time to walk them through it and say, no, this is how this program's oriented. And And so, but again, just learning, getting to see the personality of a person. It's one thing to look at an application, and I'll say some people are better at expressing things in words in a conversational environment than they are being able to put down on paper. There were things that, just looking at the evaluation criteria on paper, like it was like, I'm not getting a good sense. But once you meet that person in person, you're like, yeah, this is the right thing. Or the complete opposite. They may be great on paper, and then we find out that it's just might not be the right fit. But the best advice I could give is just be yourself, and don't be. I mean, the interviews are very informal and conversational, and so that we enjoy doing them on the back end. It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm asked to do it. So just have fun with it.
Thank you, Chris. All right, well, we are right at time, so I'm going to close this out. I do want to give a quick shout out to our program sponsors. I had a slide, but I didn't want to put the slide back up and mask everyone's smiling faces. And so just want to shout out Parker Poe, who's been a really long time kind of origin supporter of this program. And we have a partnership with Queen's University that's more of an in-kind kind of space trade agreement, which has been invaluable over the years of the program. And so I want to thank both of them for being longtime partners with us. You all, my contact information is on the ASC website. Anyone on the call, if you have questions that occur to you after this, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a good chunk of time before the deadline on June 10th. So I'm happy to answer questions more one-on-one. Also, if you are getting a little bit further along in your application and you want like a draft review, I'm always happy to do that. I think it's really helpful for folks. Like, it's really only kind of 2 narrative questions that I would say is kind of like the draft reviewing part of it. So I've read a lot of these over the years and have sat through lots of selection committee meetings. And so if you kind of get organized in advance, I'm happy to take a look at a draft and give some feedback. And so all the ways that we can be helpful, we're here. And I just want to thank our panelists again for their time and like what they do on sessions like this, but also what all of them are doing, will be doing out in the community. It's really impactful and important. And thanks to all of you for your interest, and hopefully you will stay in touch and we'll see applications coming our way in June. So appreciate your time, and I will close this out. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Catherine.